Please welcome the CEO of Fast Future, Rohit Talwar.
Well, good morning. I hope you all had a really interesting day yesterday and a chance to really immerse yourself in the workshops. My role in the next hour is to take you on a bit of a journey. We're here talking about the future of air transport. We're here talking about some of the disruptive technologies that could shape that. And what I want to do with you is to really explore some of the context in which we're thinking about the future of air transport, and then explore some of the technologies that are coming through and how they might create new opportunities for us, and particularly the technologies that are moving at an exponential pace. So where do we start? Well, I think everyone knows when we look around the world that we are in a time and place where everything is becoming more complex, more multifaceted. Not only ideas and technology are moving around the world at breakneck speed, but risk, ideas, money, challenges, strategies, everything now moves at an incredible pace that we're finding it difficult to cope with as human beings. The head of Siemens, the head of BMW, the head of the British Army are all saying very similar things, that the world is moving at a pace that we can't cope with. The head of the British Army says that things are happening now at an intensity and at a pace that's more severe than in wartime. We have less time to react, less time to analyze, less time to make good choices. And actually what that means is we have to place more reliance on good technology to support us in our decision making, to give us good information. And when we're making technology choices, we need to make sure we're well informed, not just about the technology we're about to implement, but about what might be coming next. So we don't make expensive choices today that then prove out to be even more expensive in a year's time because we have to throw them away. And part of the challenge is learning that being in a digital world means we have to change our time frame about how long we have to get the value back from the technologies we're investing in. It also means we have to think about how capable is our organization of understanding and getting the value out of the technology we're investing in. So we know that last year, around the world, $800 billion of IT investment was wasted. Projects failing, projects being cancelled. And over half of that is due to one thing, which is literacy. The people at the top of the organization not understanding the technologies that they were saying yes to, and not understanding what they're capable of doing, and therefore not getting the benefit from them. The people inside the organization, the managers and the staff, not understanding the technologies they're being given and not being trained how to get the best out of them. And then our developers not knowing how to deliver the technologies that they're working on or how to get the best out of them. And so the real challenge, I think, in terms of taking advantage of all these incredible technologies that we're talking about here is around how do we raise the digital literacy in our organization to understand what's coming, to understand the opportunities it creates, and to understand how we can act at speed to get the value from it. We spend a lot of our time, so we consult, we do research, we do this kind of speaking, and we publish books about the future. And one of the things we find with a lot of the organizations we talk to is that they're caught in this horrible time trap where they've started a project, they've spent 5, 10, 20, $30 million on something, they've still got 6 to 12 months to go, but suddenly they find that someone has launched the same service for free on the internet. Do you carry on? The completely logical, Spock-minded accountant would say, that's a sunk cost, you can't do anything about it, drop the project. But the 99.999% that's human in us says, hang on, I can't possibly say no now and cancel that project. Look at all the emotional capital, the social capital we've invested in making this happen. And so we create a lot of challenges. So our real challenge is about raising literacy and learning how to operate at speed with these projects. Trying to recognize that if we're doing a digital initiative, which is all about getting value from data, then we really have to think about a time frame where we have to extract the value in the next year because we might not be able to make any money out of it the year after or get any value out of it the year after. Really changing our mindset on how quickly we have to implement, and that requires us to learn faster. And when we also look at organizations who seem to do the best job of preparing for the future, one of the things we find is that they think about 3 different time horizons. Firstly, they think about the next 12 months. What are those vital few things we have to deliver in order to create value for this organization? We always have hundreds of objectives and many tens of goals. But what are the vital few that are really going to move the organization forward? And we can all do that. We can all look back over the last 12 months. And of everything that filled our diary, normally we can pick 2 or 3 things that we think, actually, those really made a difference to this business. And it's getting good at working out what those are. And we think that the next 12 months, really, for most organizations, in a world that's changing so fast, we think that the next 12 months are about getting really deeply enmeshed with your customers, really understanding how their world is changing, how they see the next 12 to 36 months, and really making sure we understand where their pain points are, where the opportunities are for them, and where it is that we could really start to add additional value. And actually the same is true with our employees. How do our employees see the world? What are their concerns? What are their needs? And how do we make sure we're really understanding what their development needs are? Because if we get those right in the next 12 months, deepening customer insight and deepening employee capability, then we're superbly positioned for what goes next. And we think that what's next is then looking out to say, where are innovation and growth going to come from in the next 3 years? And in particular, that's where we think most organizations need to focus on building this digital capability, really upping their game and their capacity to deliver really smart innovation at speed. And that's where you also need to understand what's changing in the world around you. What could be going on externally, whether it's regulatory, economic, customer, social, that could help us, that could give us new options, or that could get in the way of our plans and challenge our assumptions. And finally, the very best have a radar, an early warning system that's looking out 4 to 10 years to say, what's coming over the horizon? We might not be able to do anything today with some of the AI stuff that I'll talk about in a minute. But if we know it's coming, then we can identify some of those forces shaping the future, and we can look at how they might come together in different scenarios. We don't want to forecast or make one set of predictions because they'll be wrong. We know that's the only thing we can guarantee about forecasts is they're wrong. What we have to do is prepare for a range of possible scenarios. So if we can prepare for 2 or 3 different scenarios for how our world might play out, then we can come back and say, okay, what do we need to do in the next 1 to 3 years to make sure we're innovative enough, we're flexible enough, we're forward-thinking enough as an organization to be able to cope whatever happens. Demand goes up, demand goes down, security incidents decline, increase, economic forces increase, technology advances more rapidly than we thought, we're prepared for it. And this is a kind of strategic thing as well as an IT thing for our organizations. What we can also see is that we're caught right in the middle at the moment of this collision between 2 worlds on one planet. On the one side, there are those of us who were born physical. We make cars, we build houses, we run airports, we run airlines, we make airplanes. We use technology more and more in our businesses, but we're not yet digital. We don't think digitally. Whereas there's a generation who are born digital. They don't see cars, houses, airplanes, people, airports. All they see is data. And their view is if you can get the data, then you can apply the algorithms and you can do anything you want in any industry. So someone like Google, or Alphabet as their parent company is called, runs the world's biggest search engine. But they also run 2 airports. They have the driverless car that's driven more miles than anyone else. They have the world's biggest mobile phone operating system. And they have a company that hopes to extend your life expectancy by 50 years or more. Question of how you motivate a 90-year-old airport manager. But there's some interesting challenges there. But to them, there's no difference. To them, all those businesses are the same. It's all about the data. If you get the data, you can do what you want. So the challenge for all of us, and I guess the reason you're all here at this summit, is that we're learning how to become truly digital in our mindset and learning the difference between running the information technology infrastructure, automating our processes, and creating truly innovative digital services that meet the end customer, that meet our partners in the ecosystem, or that help us run the business better. And that's our challenge, I think, for all of us, is to change our DNA now to start to think in truly digital ways about what we deliver. What we also know is that there are 3 categories of beings that emerge when we start to go digital. One are the aliens, the second are the magicians, and the third are the barbarians. The aliens take advantage of these new technologies to create services and solutions that most people don't understand. We did an estimate, and we reckon that there are probably less than 5 million people on the planet who understand these terms: artificial intelligence, blockchain, ICO, and the rest of it. And we have 7.5 billion. But increasingly, we are being told by the 5 million, and by our governments that these things are the future, that our economies will be based on blockchain, on ICO. We're going to re-engineer everything around these digital distributed technologies. So if you don't understand, this is quite scary. Whether you're an investor in an airline or an airport, you're a government trying to regulate these things, if you don't understand this, then how can you make good decisions? So for the rest of us who are in the space, the challenge isn't just to create clever blockchain applications to make sure we have a single view of the truth, or to create really clever AI applications that allow us to predict disruption. It's about making sure that the people on the receiving end understand it. They understand what these things are capable of, and really helping our organizations make sense of what they would consider to be alien behavior and language. The second group that come through are more easy to get involved with. They're the magicians. They're the ones who create the wow factor with any technology. They take it and they do something that makes you tell your friends stories about what you've just done. So I'll give you an example. This one here is called Do Not Pay. It was a website developed by an 18-year-old in the UK a couple of years ago. And the sole purpose of the website was if you got a parking ticket for parking your car in the wrong place, he would help you challenge the authorities to get your money back if you didn't think you should have paid it, all with AI. And he's already saved people $5 million in fighting those claims. But he's now moved on. And he discovered, he's now at Stanford, he's 21, so he's matured. And now he's discovered that actually embedded in US aviation and hotel regulations is a little known fact that if you sell someone an airline ticket or a hotel room and the price drops, they are legally entitled to a refund of the difference. Now, I don't even need a show of hands to know that none of you advertise this on your websites if you're an airline. None of you make this promise when someone books a ticket that will give you your money back if the price drops. But this guy's created a system that scans your inbox to see if you've made travel bookings. If it finds one, it then scans these websites over 15,000 times a day to see if the price has dropped. If the price has dropped, the system then goes and negotiates your refund. All done with AI, no human intervention. That's kind of a wow factor for the customer. That's the kind of magic. My question to you is, how much of what you're doing right now is creating a wow factor, either for the internal customer who's the user of the applications, for the airline who might be your partner as an airport, for the passengers, for whoever? How much of what we're doing is really creating a wow factor and a story that they want to tell? Another example of this is the generation who are coming through and saying, why can't everything be like Tinder? Right? Tinder, people make life choices. Do I marry you? Do I say no? Left, right, microsecond decisions. Well, now there's a generation coming through saying, actually, why can't we do everything that way? Why can't I do my insurance that way? So this company, Trove, basically when I want to insure my camera, I don't pay all year. When I take it out of the cupboard to use it for 2 hours, I swipe right. When I finish using it and put it away and lock it away, I swipe left. And there's a mindset there that's saying, okay, not everything can be that easy, but how do we get to truly simple, truly elegant solutions that are the equivalent of swipe right, swipe left? Because that's what the new technologies are enabling us to do. And then finally, you have the barbarians, the people who come along and who are so disruptive and who just don't care. And normally people like Uber and Airbnb are cited as this. They ride over the existing players, they challenge the existing regulation, they challenge everything because their view is you have to overturn the old order. So when you look at what you're doing and your technology strategies and your digital strategies, the question becomes how much of it is alien to the people we're delivering it to? How much of it is creating real magic? And in where are we trying to be barbarians, either deliberately or we're doing it inadvertently? And how do we manage our strategies around those three choices? What we also see from that is this is challenging every business. This rate of innovation is challenging everyone on the planet. Whether you're a government, whether you're a bank, whether you're a retailer, people are saying, why you? Why do I have to do it the way you do it? Why do I have to pay you what you're charging? Why can't I do it myself? And increasingly, we're now seeing that question being asked of airlines and airports, where that guaranteed right to exist is being challenged. We're having to prove ourselves more and more to say we're the best people to deliver this value. And part of what's really being challenged here is the way we think. We all have what Jeff Mulgan at Demos, a UK think tank, calls zombie orthodoxies or zombie assumptions. They're ideas, beliefs, ways of working that used to serve us really well in the past. And we created a model of how the world worked, assumptions about how everything out there works. It's not real because we can't deal with everything, but we create a set of assumptions and we create a story that then guides the way we act. And our people in our organization follow that, and it helps us win in the marketplace. And that's great until suddenly the world changes and those assumptions no longer work. The question is how long we hang on to them and how long we try and make the world fit those old views of how things work. And this is where digital really challenges that, because it really challenges all those old assumptions. The best example for me of that, as a parallel, is this painting that hangs in Reina Sofia in Madrid. I was there a little while ago, and when I walked in, it literally stopped my breath. It doesn't do justice to us on this screen, but it was a massive picture. It was painted by a 16-year-old girl called Angela Santos in the 1920s in Spain. Her parents were deeply religious, and they thought that this view of the world was heretical. So they didn't just tell her off or stop her pocket money. They had her committed to a mental institution where she received ECT treatment to correct her thinking. We have a corporate equivalent of that, don't we? It's called a special project or a feasibility study. But we often challenge or push away the people who are bringing those new ideas to us. And I think a lot of you in this room are those people. You're bringing the equivalent of this painting to your leaders and saying we need to think differently, we need to behave differently, we need to do some different things here. And the problem is that we've become imprisoned by our old ideas. These zombie orthodoxies, these zombie assumptions, we just can't get past them to understand the new technologies, to understand the new ways of thinking, the new behaviors, the new business models. And we have to learn to let go. We have to learn to start saying, just because I had this idea, it may not be the best one. I don't have to believe everything I think. I don't have to assume that every idea I have will last forever. And I don't have to think that no one else can have a better idea. And the more we can start to learn to let go and start to release those old ideas and assumptions, the more we create the space for delivering on these incredible technology ideas and digital solutions that we're exploring here. The other thing that I think is critical to making this work is what our mindset is. For a lot of people, there's a sort of scarcity mindset, a Star Wars thing that says, if I win, you have to lose, and vice versa. And it's all about eliminating or destroying the competition. But there's another view that says, actually, there's a set of abundant science and technology developments coming that are going to change our world and that will help us grow the global economy from 78 trillion to about 120 trillion in the next 7 to 10 years. And that over half of that is going to come from industries and businesses that have either just been born or don't even exist yet, which is a phenomenal growth and opportunity, whether you're an airline or an airport, and where a lot of those numbers come from about the potential growth in the industry that Barbara presented yesterday. So depending on what our mindset, and that's more of a Star Trek mindset, which says there's abundance, you can have what you want, you just print it, and there's no money. In the first Star Trek, there's a totally different mindset there. And so our challenge really, in terms of becoming the kind of organization we can be, is about the mindset change to enable the digital technology change that we're talking about. And when we talk about these exponential science and technology developments, there are a range of them. We know about Moore's law in information technology that says the amount of computer power I can buy for $1,000 doubles roughly every 18 to 24 months. But we're seeing that exponential innovation happening in all sorts of fields. So for example, in food, 3 years ago, a guy called Mark Prost created the world's first laboratory-grown hamburger in Amsterdam. It cost about 325,000 euros, and it tasted like your shoes. But it was the first. Last year, the same laboratory, same burger, 11 euros, and now tastes like the kind of beef you can get at Burger King. I'm vegetarian, so I have no idea about the difference in taste. But 2 years' time, they'll be down to 50 cents. Now that is going to be truly disruptive to the whole food industry, fast food, retail. But we're seeing that happen in all these sectors. What we're also seeing is them coming together to create incredible possibilities, and AI being used as the underlying glue to really let us get the value out of the data. And what they're creating is what people are calling the fourth industrial revolution. This idea of a much smarter world where we're making the data work for us to create a better place for all humanity. And at the heart of this is artificial intelligence. And we all know something about artificial intelligence, I'm sure, in this room. But just to kind of get us in the same place, for me, artificial intelligence is about creating systems that can replicate human intelligence. Listening, reasoning, planning, speaking, interpreting language. I started my career in AI a long time ago. And when I got into AI, I didn't get into AI so I could write expert systems or chatbots. I got into it to create systems that were as smart or smarter than humans. And everyone I know who's pioneering AI is in that space. So we have to understand that when we talk about AI, where it's going. And part of the reason why AI is moving so fast now is really that the algorithms for doing machine learning, this sort of statistical processing that's working out the highest probability outcome in any situation, the algorithms for doing that are just getting better and smarter over time. And we're using techniques like neural networks to do that, to really predict what seems like the best outcome when matching faces, when working out what the right medical answer is, when working out what the likely delay might be for a flight. The other big thing is the huge amount of data that the likes of Google and Amazon and others have been amassing, that they need these tools in order to help them manipulate and draw value from. And they're literally pouring tens of billions of dollars into this. So whilst there have been many false dawns for AI, many times when people thought it was going to be a success, this time around it feels like it's here to stay. And we need to understand the whole journey, not just the first stages of it. Because typically AI is used for three things. It's used to automate stuff we do now. So you're seeing a lot of chatbots, you're seeing a lot of robots in airports basically replacing humans in answering questions. It's used to augment human decision making. So those of you who are going to the disruption workshop will hear a case there from Stefan. We'll hear about how we're pulling together smart insights in order to support humans in deciding what to do when there's a disruption, predicting the disruption, but the AI isn't making the decisions, it's providing the decision support. And then there's the third category where we're doing incredibly clever things where there's so much data that no human can manipulate it, and we're doing incredibly clever things with it, like creating new products, designing new drugs that are just beyond the capability of humans to handle that volume of information at that kind of speed. So those are the three broad areas of application that people are looking at with AI. But there's also a lot of, there are a lot of underlying technologies here, from simple expert systems that calculate your mortgage, to machine language, to vision, There's a range of underlying technologies that fit in here when people talk about AI. There's also a bit of a problem that whenever we talk about AI, people get very scared. Because at the one level, there are those expert systems. You know, you have them in planes. They basically are the autopilot systems. But at the other end, you have the sort of Arnold Schwarzenegger Terminator scenario, where we have super intelligent machines that decide that humans are a waste of space, and the only function for us is to melt us down to be fuel for the computers. The problem is that the media makes it sound like that there's a 2-week gap between the expert system and the Terminator scenario. And so everyone panics and doesn't quite know what to do with it. We think you need to turn that around and really understand these different stages and understand how quickly they might develop. So when you start on the AI journey, you understand how far it could go. So at the start of that is, you know, the simple expert systems, rule-based systems, you know, let me determine whether you should have a loan or not, the robotic process automation stuff. We're seeing a lot of this coming into aviation now. Then, and these have been around for 30 years in different forms. The second is something that we see a lot. We're seeing a lot of people now doing chatbots, where you're basically taking a lot of information, applying machine learning, statistical processing techniques to determine what the right answer is to replace the human doing that kind of query answering it. So you're seeing lots of these chatbots appearing now in airports around the world and airlines using them to service customers from Iceland Air to Frankfurt Airport. And the robo-advisors that say, you know, what is the right oil for my motorbike? What is the right financial product for my daughter? Those kinds of things. They're becoming more and more complex. More interesting, I think, as a next stage, is where you're seeing AI that's actually as smart as humans in a narrow domain, in one domain. So a couple of years ago, Google have a company called DeepMind that created a system called AlphaGo to take on the world Go champion. This guy, 18 times world champion, called Lee Sedol from South Korea. So, pretty good at the game. They didn't teach the system how to play Go. They just gave it some learning rules and an objective to win. It then watched Go games and started to work out how to play the game for itself. And the human trainers nudged it when it made poor choices. Beat the European champion, then took on the world champion and beat him by 4 games to 1. In all 4 games, he retired stressed. He basically said the machine was making moves he'd never seen before, and it was learning his behavior and working out how to make him make mistakes. We have another term for that. It's called marriage. But what we found was that this system was incredible, and we're seeing this in lots of applications now. People using it for facial recognition in the World Cup in Russia, to work out whether you're a potential problem that we wanted to stop you at the airport or train station, people using it to diagnose cancer. We're seeing a lot of those kinds of applications. Really deep expertise that's smarter than humans. I don't know if you saw on the news this morning, in the UK there's a company called Babylon, a health company, that has a doctor on call service using AI that is more accurate than human doctors in diagnosing your condition now. Needless to say, the human doctors aren't very happy about this. But we're seeing this in all sorts of fields. Google didn't stop there. Last year, they created AlphaGo Zero, the sibling of AlphaGo. With AlphaGo Zero, they didn't teach it anything. They didn't even guide it. They just let it watch the game and work out for itself how to play. After 3 days, it took on AlphaGo, which is now world champion, and beat AlphaGo by 100 games to 0 after 3 days training. That's the kind of level we're at with this technology now. So when someone says, oh, that's not going to be possible with AI, or it won't be able to outperform a human in X, Y, or Z, nonsense. In individual tasks, AI is at the point where it can outperform humans. But if we tried to teach AlphaGo Zero how to diagnose cancer or how to determine flight delays, it would have forgotten how to play Go. That's the kind of state of the art right now. Where we're going next is AI that will actually understand how it reasons, understand how humans reason, understand things like emotions, and be able to do things like negotiation and create truly smart contracts on blockchains. This stuff is working in the labs and is going to come to market in the next 2 or 3 years. And we'll see it being used in all sorts of commercial applications, all sorts of new services being created around the AI's ability to negotiate and represent us. The next stage is really where I came in and where most AI scientists came in, which is this idea of creating self-aware machines that are as smart as humans. Some people say these are 5 years away. Others say we may never do them completely because we can't replicate human consciousness and emotions and things. My view is that within 5 years, you'll be seeing systems that look like they're as smart as us. They won't be, but for most applications, it won't matter. My phone is already smarter than me in most things. So we have to understand that the journey we're on, we're going to be seeing this kind of technology come through, and maybe even faster, because we just don't know what people are working on all over the world in pushing this. And the kind of money that's going in, we don't really know what the people are doing with it yet. You see some of the patents, but they only launch the patents just before they launch the commercial offering. There's a stage after this, though, which is called superintelligence. It was a term coined by a guy called Nick Bostrom from Oxford University. And what he says is if we get to artificial general intelligence, then the next stage is that we will naturally have machines that become smarter than us. And they'll create better economic systems, better political systems, new fields of science. We can't really describe what they'll be able to do with basic human intelligence, but we can just imagine some of the possibilities. Some people say this is just 10 years away. Again, others are saying it may never happen. I think if we get to artificial general intelligence, we'll get to this stuff 2 or 3 years later. It won't be long before this happens. So when you hear Sarwant and people talking about dark airports in that session, in the think tank session, some of you may be thinking, oh, this could never happen. This might never happen. We might never see a situation where we've got a completely humanless system where the machines are doing everything. I think we have to understand that there's at least a possibility. There's at least a scenario where that is possible. And in our thinking, we have to prepare for that as one of the possibilities for the future. And some people might want that. Other people may hate the idea. But we have to prepare for all those scenarios. And then the final one, the seventh stage, if you like, is what Ray Kurzweil, the chief engineer at Google, wants, which is to create the singularity. He believes that when we get super intelligent machines, they'll work out how to connect our brains together without talking. That we'll be able to share our ideas, network our dreams, connect to the intelligences of the planet, animals, plants, weather systems, that actually will have one giant kind of hive mind where everything is connected together. He thinks this will happen by 2045. Again, others are saying never. For me, I just hope it never happens. I don't really want someone sharing my dreams. I quite like them being private. So you've got these 7 stages. And you need to think about where are we playing in these different stages of the game. But also, if we're crafting our AI strategies, how far into the future are we thinking when we're talking about developing AI? And where does this take us? So the next few years, we're going to see a lot of live, real-time translation. We're going to see more and more companies using AI for handling customer service. We're going to see a lot of experimentation, a lot of airport and airline innovation labs. We already see them from the likes of Lufthansa and Changi and others, IAG, all setting up these innovation labs to really explore what these technologies can do and invest in the next stage. By 2025, in the next 5 to 7 years, we could see AI help transform the whole way we experience travel. So I could be watching a film of Patagonia. My AI is monitoring my facial expressions, seeing that I'm getting excited. By the time the film is finished, it's compiled for me a 2-minute travel video of the highlights of Patagonia, and says to me, are you interested in going there? And I say, yeah, why don't we ask a few of my friends? I'll record a voiceover, the message will go to my friends, they'll add in their requirements, we'll then reverse auction that to the web, and whoever, travel agents, airlines, experience providers, hotels, everyone will come back in and reverse bid to us to say, here's the package we can offer that best fits your requirements. And once we've chosen which option we want, AI will then manage that whole experience, the bookings, the transport. When we're in our driverless car getting to the airport and we're late, it will be negotiating with the other cars in front, paying them to get out of the way so we can get there faster. It'll be translating in real time when we get to the destination. It will be overlaying on what we see the historic vision of what Patagonia looked like 50 years ago and 100 years ago. We'll basically, through the choices we make, change our whole travel experience. And then when we get out to 2035, That's when we might see this sort of artificial general intelligence. We might see a very sort of changed world where AI is running our world in a sense. But what's interesting is we're already seeing these ideas moving into the physical world. So this is in construction. This is a company called Broad Group who use AI to design construction programs that they deliver at the same speed as people deliver software. So they can build these 57-story buildings in China and around the world now in 19 days. They basically manufacture in the factory and then plug it together on site. And my friend here was talking last night about how he built a football stadium in Saudi in 1 year for 60,000 people. This is taking that to a next level. And I sit in a lot of airport meetings where we're talking about construction projects that probably won't finish before I die. And, you say, well, what are you piloting? Why don't you at least try building a toilet at this kind of speed, or a repair shed, or a garage or something? Try it, learn. Because you don't learn by arguing about these things. You don't learn by finding all the reasons why it shouldn't work. You learn by trying this stuff in a safe, safe controlled experiment, but doing it quickly. We're seeing the start of the emergence of these companies with no employees. This is an insurance company created by some Russians. It's now in 6 different countries. And basically, when you want to insure something, say you want to insure your bicycle, you join an insurance pool with other people, you put your money in. If there's a claim, we all decide how much that claim is worth, and basically that person gets the money. At the end of the year, if there's any money left in the insurance pool, we get it back. That doesn't sound like any version of insurance any of us have ever experienced. Yeah? That's turning the game on its head. It's using the technology. The company now doesn't make money out of investing our insurance fees. It makes money on a tiny transaction fee for everyone who joins. But the critical thing is now you and I are doing all the work here, and there are no employees. So when people talk about dark airports, and other people go, you're crazy, we have to understand that the technology is going to enable this. It's whether we make the human choices to go there. We're also in a world where you're starting to see this idea of tokens replacing money and everything being equivalent. We can get rewarded now. If you go to Doc on the blockchain, it's a new social media platform. If you put an article up there, if you put an article on Facebook or LinkedIn, you get a tick or a like. Here you get real money. You get rewarded. People reward you with tokens, which are worth real money. So our networks are becoming valuable, but also we're in a world now where my cash has absolute equivalence with my air miles, with my store loyalty points, with the rewards I earn for doing community work. And there are people starting to create new versions, new tokens, new currencies that interchange all these things. The banking system is nowhere close to this. Airlines are more advanced than banks in this respect, in that you can pay for your airline ticket with with a loyalty point or with cash. Banks won't let you do that. I can't pay my mortgage if I had one with my reward points from Staples. But we're moving to a point where we'll be able to do that. And if you look at the next generation of cryptocurrencies, what China's thinking about, they're talking about having a currency that might do this, that have multiple asset classes within that. Think about how that changes the game for us. The mobility landscape itself is changing quite dramatically. This is the project by the Boring Company created by Elon Musk that's going to create underground tunnels in LA to speed you through the city in seconds or minutes to get to the airport or to key destinations underground. Put you in the vehicle, travel you through. We're seeing lots of flying car projects. Dubai, China are both talking about flying taxis this year. I think China's just piloted an 8-person flying taxi, a drone. And now you've got Uber talking about flying taxis and coming up with already commissioning the designs for what their taxi ports could look like and starting to negotiate with various airports to house the taxi ports. So this stuff is moving at speed. We know that lots of people are building Hyperloop services, these train services, maglev train services, or pneumatic tube services that would take us between destinations at between 450 kilometers an hour and 1,200 kilometers an hour. You could do LA to San Francisco in 30 minutes. And the cost is about 1/10 of building the equivalent railroad. We've got projects now being explored in the Middle East, in Europe, in the US, and even in places like India. So when we're thinking about the future of aviation, we also need to think about how quickly these alternatives might evolve. As part of the mobility scene, we're also seeing AI allow us to break the link between ownership and usage. So when we have truly smart autonomous vehicles, they don't need to be owned by anyone. A lot of the auto companies are looking at the idea of self-owning cars, that they'll just release the car into the community. It will take you to work, take someone else to work, take someone shopping, to the hospital, and we'll earn money. The car will earn money for every trip and then share it with whoever made it, whoever services it, whoever refuels it. We're moving into a world where autonomous assets could also own themselves, be part of self-insuring insurance hives on the road when they're traveling together. So once you go on the road, you join the insurance network. Once you leave, you go out. If there are humans driving, then the premium you're paying goes up because the risks go up. They'll also be made of 4D printed materials quite often, which means that the body panels will change shape after an accident and reform. So one innovation, autonomous vehicle, impacts auto finance, auto insurance, and auto repair. And we're going to see this across all sorts of sectors. And then we're seeing people say, actually, the next frontier in all this is not Earth at all, but other planets. We've just seen Japan discover land on a new asteroid. The whole opportunity for asteroid mining, planetary inhabitation is interesting. And I actually joined a community that wants to create the first colony in space called Asgardia, and I've become an MP for it, just declaring it. But the goal there is to actually set up a colony in space or on the moon by 2030. I'm not that fussed about whether we get there. I'm really interested in the fact that 200,000 people have already joined this as citizens. It's now the 172nd biggest population on the planet. The interesting thing to me is that when you do something like this, you create new governance systems, new economic systems, new social systems, and there are no winners and losers because you're not trying to change anything that's already there. You're creating with a clean sheet of paper, and hopefully you create ideas that influence. I think there's a really interesting opportunity for the aviation industry to get involved in projects like this, to say, what would we want, if we could start again, what would we want aviation governance to look like? What would we want the aviation system to look like? How would we make that work? And to experiment with new models before you actually create them. So with all this going on, what new possibilities are emerging? Well, I think you know a lot of these, but I just thought I'd pick a few ideas that I think are really interesting. So one is biometrics. We're seeing this happening everywhere. This basically idea that your face becomes your passport. I think you've heard the SITA guys talk about this example here, this end-to-end trial that's going on in Brisbane Airport where you're using biometrics to navigate you the whole way through. And there are lots of others that we know about and you see, and we know Istanbul's experimenting with this, lots of people experimenting with biometrics to make this work. We're also seeing people now starting to truly embrace the fact that we're moving systems to the cloud, connectivity speeds are getting faster, and 5G opens up some real possibilities. So we're seeing lots of Internet of Things trials, and you've heard SITA talk about a few of theirs. This is an interesting one at Luton, where they're putting lots of sensors into the building to enable us to monitor queue times, wait times, where the delays are, and really get quite dynamic in the management of the airport. We're seeing people now putting the early stages of AI in. So people like KLM using AI on social media to answer your questions, to help you navigate, work out, and just make simple choices. Where we sometimes find it hard to get a human to answer our questions, the chatbots are really starting to serve a powerful function. We're seeing the messenger bots. This is one from Frankfurt Airport, which is quite a fun one, called Frankie, which again is just answering those questions for you, and is always available, never gets angry, never has a bad night and therefore a bad morning. We're just seeing a lot of these because these are a good early way of getting into the game with AI. Then we're seeing the next generation of smart kiosks. So you've seen this fun one from these guys from SITA, Kate, that it's a check-in desk that basically moves to wherever the bigger queues are in the airport. It's dynamic. It starts to let you manage your airport in a smart way. And then this is more of a border security one, the avatar one, replacing a security agent, monitoring your microfacial expressions, monitoring your body language, and starting to see if you're showing signs of being a security concern. And we're seeing lots of people experiment with the live translation piece. This is one that Air New Zealand are doing using Pixel from Google. This can translate in real time in 40 languages. So they're using it in the airport and on planes to try whether they can serve customers in their own language, or at least understand what the customers are saying in those conversations. One of the things I like the way people are using the technology now is around deep personalization. So you saw Dubai in November last year, and now Schiphol launched a delivery service in the airport that basically says you can order food as you're running through the airport, and delivery will bring it to you at the gate, whatever you want. I think the fee is about €2.50. But basically, you can order from any outlet in the airport. But what it also allows you to do is what's happened on the high street. So we now know that when you order food from a lot of takeaways from restaurants, quite often it's not coming from the actual restaurant, it's coming from a big industrial kitchen that's cooking for lots of different restaurants and then delivering via delivery. This allows you to do this in the airport environment. So behind the scenes, to have 10, 20, 30 different brands in a kitchen where you can have food brought to someone at the gate, really starting to personalize their choice. Schiphol are also experimenting with this personal security pass, which I think is quite interesting, where you can book the time where you go through security. Now, this is either a brilliant idea or incredibly crazy. I don't know yet. It sounds like fun. It sounds like an interesting experiment. But it's taking personalization to the next level. We're seeing KLM experiment, and lots of other people experiment with how do you do really super fast flight rebooking using social media. So KLM are doing this with WhatsApp now, where you can basically, if you're delayed, the experiment is to see how quickly we can rebook you onto your flight and in a conversational way, taking the stress out of travel. With robotics, we're seeing lots of fun stuff. So you're seeing robotic car parking now being tried, where little robots park your car so you don't even have to worry about it. We're seeing lots of experiments with baggage handling. We've seen this nice robot from SITA that meets you at your car, takes your bag, locks it securely, hands you the prints you the bag tag, and then it takes your bag off so that you don't have to worry about it again. So we're seeing lots of clever experiments and people trying to scale up more and more what we can do with robotics in baggage handling, from personalization through to the mass handling of baggage in back of house. And then you're seeing, some people really kind of embracing this and saying, how do we get closer to that dark airport model, like Haneda, who are experimenting with 7 different types of robotic application, from informing passengers to baggage handling to security. They're trialing a whole set of robots together because they want to understand how you manage an environment that's so heavily robotic. You're seeing lots of people now trying autonomous assets, using autonomous vehicles to move people, goods, maintenance activities around an airport at a faster, more fluent pace than you can in other environments. So you've got examples like Schiphol and Gatwick both trying this right now with different platform providers. Lots of people also now starting to embrace the idea of drones being used to do inspections on planes, so that you can do a total inspection of a plane every time it lands. And do it at a faster pace than you could ever do with humans, but also start to get into repair of those planes. And the one that I think is interesting, that no one's done yet, but would be to have a personal drone navigate you around the airport. So when you need to get to your gate, you just follow the drone to your airport, and then it takes the next passenger, which I think would be quite good fun, although it might get a bit crowded if there's lots of drones all flying around, but maybe it's a premium service. And then we're seeing, for the aircraft themselves and for the physical environment, people starting to experiment with 3D and 4D printing. I've done a lot of flights in the last 4 weeks. And one of the things I found is I often end up sitting next to someone who's much bigger than me. And therefore, they end up sharing my seat. And I'm quite big. And it strikes me that technology can solve some of this, that with 3D printing, we can start to create more flexible seats. But with 4D printing, we can create objects that change their shape over time. So instead of buying a seat, maybe at some point we start to buy space on a plane. And the seat actually expands for the person who's sitting in it. And you start to match people on seats based on their size. So you have someone small sitting next to someone large. 4D printing will let us do that. Will our mindsets? Will our mindsets allow us to change the nature of the way we configure the seating on a plane to actually suit the fact that people are very different sizes and different in shape? I just think there's an incredible opportunity there to make the journey a lot more comfortable for a lot more people. Then you're seeing people using augmented reality to help us navigate the airport. Gatwick are trialing this, where you've got, I think it's a couple of hundred beacons around the airport, feeding the AR system so it can navigate you. Over time, they hope to push retail offers onto it, but basically saying, how do I help you move around our airport more conveniently, get you where you need to be, send you the messages, really personalized to you. And then you're seeing the kind of rise of blockchain. So if you're going to the collaboration workshop, you're going to see Harvey from IAG talking about how BA have collaborated with Heathrow and others to see if we can get a single source of the truth about a flight, the single source of information that everyone can believe using blockchain. You're seeing others looking at using Singapore exploring using it for loyalty points. You're seeing AirAsia go a stage further and saying, actually, we'll create our own digital currency for loyalty points using blockchain, so that we'll start to create something that could be tradable into other communities, not just ours. And you're going to see a lot more of these experiments around blockchain. There's a lot of initiatives coming from Asia to create blockchain-based travel booking systems and travel ecosystems that will work in very different ways. And then you're seeing some people actually start to accept cryptocurrencies for payment. So Lot, Peach from Japan, starting to accept cryptocurrencies as payment. Although at the moment it's kind of hard to understand why anyone would accept would pay with a cryptocurrency because they're so volatile. And today I might pay $400 for my seat, but by tomorrow, because of the increase in value of my cryptocurrency, it turns out I paid $800. So at the moment they're not being used as trading currencies, but people are doing it more from the marketing benefit and to learn how to work with crypto. And then the next generation that's coming through, I think, is really interesting. We've all heard about quantum computing now. I've yet to meet anyone who can explain it to me in the same way as the last person. But quantum is a really interesting field of computation, which kind of breaks all the rules that we knew about digital computation. We're starting to get to some reasonably fast computers being built by the big players. And now people are starting to say, well, actually, we could use this on really complex applications like air traffic control, like weather system management, like scheduling, that these kind of applications, these kind of tools lend themselves to some really interesting heavy-duty applications. I think you'll start to see them being used in the aviation environment in the next couple of years because the tools are getting powerful enough to do that. So the question rises here. If we've got this kind of changing context, if we've got this rapidly accelerating pace of exponential technologies colliding with each other, yes, there are the people who want to have the fully lights-out automated world, but I'm guessing that most people still want to have humans in the picture. So how do we make sure we make these technologies serve us? What do we do to make sure we're still creating very human organizations that people want to work for and work with? And the first is, we're all busy. My guess is that none of you are thinking, oh, wow, what will I do when I get back to my desk on Friday? Yeah. So we have to actually make some time to think about the future and to think about how we're going to do change. And the simplest thing to do is to actually think about what can we stop? Asking your colleagues, what are the things they would stop doing if they thought no one would notice? The meetings, the processes, the reports that add no value. Who spends 3 days a week writing a report that someone else spends 10 seconds reading because they only read one number? I'm sure it doesn't happen in any of your businesses, but what can we cut out to really free up time and space in people's head for change? The second is that idea of thinking about 3 horizons and actually having different people thinking about the different horizons. So, what are we doing for the next 12 months to raise our customer and employee focus and to build our digital literacy? This week in New York, I was with a big professional services firms, and while we were there, they agreed that they want to be the first company in the world to train all of their employees on exponential technologies by the end of the year. And that's 65,000. They want them all to have at least a day's training to understand what these things are and how they could impact. Because it's very hard to make decisions if you don't understand the stuff you're working with. The second then is that having the people who are saying, where is innovation going to come from? Where is growth going to come from? And how do we build that digital capability on the back of our understanding of what our customers want? And then the final stage is those people who are looking forward to 10 years out, who are looking at what might be coming over the horizon, and who are asking really interesting questions about how might we change our business model? How might we change our concept? So if we were an airport, how might we operate completely free to the airlines and retailers who use us? How would we make money if we did that? Asking just radically different questions different ways of charging for our services, different ways of making money, different ways of delivering service to the community. Then there's the skill set. To operate in the world we're talking about, we need to be changing our management training, our leadership training, our development of people in our organization, equipping them with the skills to think in scenario terms, to scan the horizon, to deal with complexity, to do complex problem solving. Skills that will allow them to move from job to job inside the organization, but also if they leave, to move to other organizations. What are we doing to really build that capability inside our organization with the next generation of leadership skills? So we've covered a lot of territory. We've looked at a lot of different aspects of what's shaping the future for all of us, the exponential technologies that are becoming, if you like, the bedrock of our strategies, how it's being used to disrupt other industries, how AI could evolve, and what are some of the things people are already doing with these advanced technologies in the aviation environment. The challenge now is to think about how do we use what we're learning here from these workshops to really go back and start new conversations in our organization. And how do we give ourselves permission to start the conversations that other people might laugh at because they're uncomfortable. The author Graham Greene says there comes a time in everyone's life when you have to open the door and let the future in. I think the reason you're all here at this forum is that the door is very firmly open for you. You have a belief and a passion to create the future for your organizations, and I hope I've just given you some ideas on where the opportunities might lie and how we change our mindsets and our literacy to really be able to take advantage of the incredible range of offerings that are coming towards us. Thank you. When we send out the slides, we'll send out also a list of sources that you can look at. One of the most powerful things we found around changing mindsets in organizations is actually to get people watching a couple of videos every day. Like the 30 to 90-second videos you get from the World Economic Forum, from Mashable, from Futurism, that just show new concepts and new ideas being trialed and being operated. And we just try and encourage people to look at 2 of those a day before you go into a workshop to talk about our digital future. Yeah. 2 weeks of doing that, your conversation changes. You don't have to do so much selling. You're then responding to, can we do this? Can we have that? Can we, suddenly you've got an audience that understands this is a movement that's happening. This is a set of possibilities that are emerging. It changes mindsets like nothing else I've seen. And it's so simple. Just get people to watch 2 videos a day. And then after about 3 days, people start sharing videos they found. And you just create a little space on the web where, your internal intranet or wherever, where people can share what they're finding. But you just use those videos to have a more compelling impact than a lot of the conversations we have one-to-one.
Okay. Thank you for a very nice and interesting piece of information. Really, really great. I was wondering if some of the information you presented today, like Asgardia, is it available on the net?
Yeah, you can just just search for Asgardia Space Nation.
Okay, so what is it's like 30 years from today, 40 years?
So the goal is the founders want to create a nation in space by 2030. They've already launched a satellite, and the idea is to really, there's 2 things. There's one bunch of people who are really interested in the space technology and the physical technology of how you'd exist in this colony, which is very important, obviously. And then there's another whole group of people who are saying, what if we can start again? If we had a clean sheet of paper, how would you design political systems, economic systems, social systems, so you didn't have the kind of challenges we have today on the planet? And because today, if you try and change it anywhere in the world, somebody will lose out with the change and somebody else stands to gain. But when you're starting from nothing, there are no losers, there are no winners, there's just opportunity. And the hope is that you might start to influence things back on Earth. But it's just a lot of fun as well. As a futurist, it's a dream project. Create a new country. Yes, please.
So who are the investors? Who are investing in?
It's created, I know I'm doing too much promotion. It's created by a Russian guy who is just a space fanatic. But the idea is that we've just formed a parliament, and then the next stage is form a government. and that then new institutions get born within that, and the new mechanisms to actually create the funding to keep it going. You know, they're creating their own cryptocurrency. They're looking to create trade between all those people using blockchain, using different economic forms and models that sit outside the normal regulatory structures to experiment with them. So there's all sorts of possibilities that we're exploring at the moment for how you do this going forward.
Thank you.
But it's open to people giving it money as well. Isn't everyone? Excellent. Oh, hand over there.
Thank you. Good morning. Dan Ebbinghaus from SITA. Thank you for your presentation. I like your view, fairly forward-looking in a positive way. So the abundance concept is an interesting one. But there must be, your thinking must also come to the view that there will be others who will try to disrupt in a very negative way. So how does that play into, you know, all the concepts that can go forward to prevent that from happening? Or if it does happen, how does it ever get rebalanced again?
So, I mean, that's a great question, and there's so many elements of it. One is, there's a whole movement at the moment trying to say, can we create ethics around AI when you can't see what people are doing, and you don't know what they're doing? And will it take AI to monitor the AI? You know, it's a whole space. The second is, what if people deliberately, you know, try and manipulate markets, economies, do all sorts of things with this? And we have a real risk there, because our systems aren't very good. I was at a session at this session we were at. One of the people there was a company that hires hackers to go and hack systems for the DoD and whatever. And she told this great story. She said, we got a project for the DoD to work on testing their most mission-critical systems in wartime. Right? And the DoD set up the project to say, okay, you guys get going, and in a month's time, we'll bring in the people who are going to check your findings and look at if you found anything that's a flaw. Because these systems have already been checked over by two of the biggest management consultancies on the planet who, you know, professionals at this stuff. So great, 20 minutes in, they found a mission-critical flaw. And you know, this is bright brains working on this stuff at the DoD, then evaluating it. We have to be very clever now in how we start to test for the risks. And we actually have to go over to the dark side, in a sense, and use a lot more of the dark web hackers and those kind of people to test our systems and to tell us the way they think, which is completely different often, and how they would look for vulnerabilities. Because the thing that these guys found, no one else would have thought of ever looking at it that way in a kind of Western form. So we have to be open to it, you know, having people look at this from different cultural perspectives. We have to start thinking about things like bias. Most AI is developed by men, and we don't even realize that there's a bias in there and how we think. And so to actually take out some of the bias that's in systems, you get to really interesting issues, which isn't this forum, but take justice, the justice system. If you replicate in software the way the justice system works, then in a lot of countries, certain communities will be disproportionately represented in who gets arrested and who gets sent to prison. So if you want to change that, you have to make a conscious choice to say, no, we're not going to send as many of those people through the justice system, which is, you know, morally, ethically, socially, politically, quite a time bomb. So we're entering a space which is really quite challenging, and lots of people are exploring it. No answers right now, because it's so early in the game. And again, it's an issue of how do you regulate technologies that haven't yet been created, serving applications that we haven't yet thought of, that will have issues that we can't even imagine. It's quite hard to kind of pre-regulate for that. So, you know, but we have to become much more mindful as the developers of those second and third order effects of what we're doing.